Okay, thank you. So we are going to listen to Gustavo Martínez-Mekler del Instituto de Ciencias Físicas y también del C3. Adelante, Gustavo, bienvenido.
The first thing I want to do is to thank the organizers for inviting me to this meeting. I love the C3. The adventure of doing this goes back to, as Chris mentioned, it's 10 years of the building, but the C3 started 21 years ago. So I'll get into the subject because there's still time, and I tend to be a bit dispersed. What I'll be talking to you has to do with criticality, with something that I have always been curious about since I started working in physics, and how it intervenes in certain problems in biology. And I'm going to try to show, thank you. I'm going to try to show that physics, traditional physics, statistical physics, has a lot to say still about these things, no? And so, first of all, the concept of criticality. I did my PhD in criticality, so since then, that was about a couple of years ago. Since then, I've always been working on this. And here are several ways of talking about criticality. One is a coexistence of robustness and evaluability, a trade-off between stability and flexibility, capability of remembering the past and acting reliably in the future. That's a phrase that Stuart Kauffman said. I thought it was interesting. Information transmission optimization, enhanced functionality, multiple scale relations, all of this at a minimum cost. The idea of criticality starts in physics in phase transitions. Some phase transitions go through a critical point. And the basic thing there is that everything is correlated with everything. And this occurs at all length scales and at all time scales. And that's what gives, in my opinion, the study of critical phenomena is a glimpse of what happens in complex systems that is coming from physics and that still lives in equilibrium. It's a special case. So here I came across this poster that says criticality in biology, and this happened in 2015. And all the subjects that were mentioned there, well, you can see them there: mechanisms of power laws, collective behavior, etc., etc. Hendrik Jensen was there in this meeting. A bunch of people that I respect a lot, and some of them my friends, were in this. And so now I wanted to talk about critical regimes in biology, and these are areas within the biology where people have been talking about criticality. And you can find it in genetics, proteomics, metabolomics, nervous system development, immunology, ecology, and in swarming. And now I'm going to, my purpose is to try to convince you that some occurs in fertilization and in evolution, a lot of work has been done, but a new perspective towards evolution. And it's not there, but I'll be talking about music too. So music is a biological system, since it's the music I'm talking about is one made by biological entities, etc. And here, I found this in the YouTube. It's interesting. It's a nice presentation of criticality. Now, going to the subject matter, it's fertilization. This paper came out a year ago, and this is a summary of all I'll be telling you about and much more now, but it's an updated summary of that. And in fertilization, we looked into the behavior of invertebrate marine species. In particular, we looked at sea urchins and how the sperm that come out from the sea urchin, to be clear, and how they come out there, they go into the ocean, and they reach the egg. And when they swim, how they manage to swim there. So that's the part they're mostly interested in. This is an experiment. It's not a simulation. It's the egg would be here, and these are swimming here. I'll tell you a bit about how they swim. And then it's in mammals. In mammals, it's a different story. In mammals, the sperm from mammals, humans, they're quite dumb when they come out. They cannot fertilize. They have to go through a whole series of processes that make them able to fertilize. And one of them is called a capacitation, so that they are capacitated to be able to fertilize. In that case, they are in the female tract, and they come here. And here there are a load of things happening. You can touch this problem in many ways, but eventually they go to the uterus, and they go to the oviduct, and around here is where it occurs. But to get here, they have to capacitate. Remember that word, I'll be talking about that later. And about a third of the sperms capacitate in an ejaculation. And there's lots of things here, chemotaxis, thermotaxis, infotaxis, etc. But when they get to the egg, there's a region here, it's called zona pellucida, and they have to go through there. And the only way they can traverse that is that here in the sperm, and there's like a little bag, it's the acrosome, and this membrane has to hit that one, and when it touches it, this opens, and you have the substance that's in here comes out, and once it comes out, it can go through this zona pellucida. That's called the acrosomal reaction. So if you don't have capacitation, you don't have acrosomal reaction, you do not have fertilization in internal fertilization. I'll be talking about those two cases. There's all sorts of different types of sperm, but they have many things in common. And this is just to show you that they have things in common. And the mechanism with which they swim is that the flagellum, right now I'll say that it goes like this, but then I'll contradict myself. That when it goes like this, the way it goes like that, it's because it has a structure here of some filaments that go through the tail. And these are connected together. They're connected to the center, but they're stuck to the head. And when they move one with respect to the other, the flagellum bends. And that's a universal mechanism, and it happens in most of the ciliars that most of our cells have. And there's another mechanism that's in bacteria in which they swim going around like that. Now, this is I don't know, when we did a test, this was working. Can you make it work? Well, I lost we did test it. Well, here you would see how the eggs come out and how the sperms come out. It was a film of that. And this is not working again. But the important thing here, ¿hay alguna manera de hacer que esto sí gire? Porque se perdió y cuando lo... está cargando. Well, but I'll tell you what happens. They swim like this, circles, and then here the eggs in the middle, and over here you can see that they keep on swimming regardless of what happens here, and here they go to the center. And this is when there is chemotaxis, and this is when there isn't chemotaxis. Eventually, both of them have chemotaxis, but under more stringent conditions. Can't wait for that. And so I was hearing this thing about once you take a decision, you just go ahead. Here's a bit of that happens. The sperm is swimming, And here's the egg. Here's the gradient of a substance that comes from the egg. It's called speract. And when it gets received on the membrane, that activates the calcium oscillations inside. And it turns out to be that when the calcium oscillation goes up, when this slope is the biggest, at this point, it turns. And here's where it takes the decision. And once it takes the decision, it goes like that until it's tangent to an isocline here, and then it swims like that. But the message here is they swim always going in circles, and that has to do with an asymmetry they have in those microtubules, and eventually they do turn because of a signal that comes from the calcium. Calcium directs the swimming. And, this takes me to the modeling of this. And the modeling of this, you have a membrane, and you have the interior of the tail, and there's an interchange of ions here. The main thing here is the difference in the potential of the membrane, and that makes a signaling process here. So this signaling process eventually makes the calcium swim, and then you can look at it as a circuit, and you can make some sort of truth table of switches that go on and off, and with that you can study the whole system in an integrated fashion. This work has been done with an experimental group that works in the Institute of Biotechnology in Cuernavaca, and they have been working on that for 40 years. So all the experimental work here they're going to talk about was done there. And so these things move around, and this is just to say that contrary to many cases, you can do good, you can make some predictions, and the group there could do the experiments, and the 4 predictions we made, when you did the experiments, they were correct. And people started looking at the way that the whole system works and how you can activate or deactivate the fertilization, how you can make the sperm go to the center or not. And these are all sorts of drugs and things that you associate with that. But here I'm going to the part I'm more interested in. There were 20 elements in the tail, and each one of those you can think of it as a node, in this network, and the configuration is the value of on and off of those there. And you can have an evolution, and the evolution eventually goes to a periodic behavior, and you can have an attractor. Now you work in the world of attractors and repellers within dynamical systems. And here you can see these are the basins of attraction of different configurations and how they have to go through a transient, and they go here and they oscillate. And in this case, the oscillations are of period 4. So that's a representation of the attractor landscape of these systems. And here's a point that is the center for the criticality. If you take away one of these elements, if you take any of these elements, this looks the same. It's not altered. This looks the same as you've quantified it in many ways. But that makes you see that these elements are redundant. So you kick them out, you take them out, you reconnect the network and see what happens, and it works. It doesn't need those. And that way you can reduce your network, and you can do better calculations and predictions. But here, there's this concept that's called a reader map, in which you look at a configuration. Remember this configuration in this space of configurations? You look at the neighbors that are nearby, and you look at one point here, a neighbor, and see how they evolve in time. And if they can either get closer or they can just expand completely. And so, and you do that for all the points in the configuration, for all the possible combinations. And this means that here you have half of them. The distance is the number of points of switches that are different from one to the other. And here you have a system that starts like that, then it gets to here, then it goes like this, and eventually in time it goes down to that. If it's here, it compresses. If it's here, it expands. And if it's here, you're in the critical region. And this was done by Derrida and Beaumont, and it's a way of looking at the criticality. I think it has to do, it's related somehow to susceptibility, but take that, if you come here and you come with a slope of 1, you are critical. And so what we did is that we said, what happens if you take away one of the elements, like I did in the landscape? And if you take one of the elements away, criticality is robust. Everything keeps on being critical. But then there's another thing you can do. And the other thing you can do is that you take a point in a space that can go anywhere at once, and you take another one that cannot go everywhere at once because one of the nodes is deleted. And you compare the behavior between those two subspaces. And when you do that, then you find that all of these that are here correspond to the ones that would be up here. Here are the ones that correspond here. And then you can throw away all these here. And so if you impose criticality, you have to throw them away. Let's say, if I take something out and I lose criticality, I cannot take it out. I have to keep it. So by asking the conservation of criticality, I can throw away the ones that if you took it away, nothing happened. And if you see that and you compare it with what I showed you before, this shows you what I said. If I do that, then I end up with the same network that I ended up with the dynamics in the attractor landscape. It coincides with that. So asking for criticality is a condition, a necessary condition. And if you make a model that you start from bottom to top instead of top to bottom, you can write some differential equations that describe this. And if you get to the level where you can describe the experiments and you see the size of the network, it's the same network. And so this is the one from bottom to top, this is from top to bottom, and they are the same. For students, I recommend you look at this. It's an explanation there about all these points about criticality, complexity, etc. No? But so then criticality is something that you need. Now, this is just to show you that that was for the sea urchin, but now I'm looking at the mammals. And at the mammals, this part here, all of this, has to do with the capacitation I mentioned. And you can see what are the conditions for having capacitation. And we could find out that the conditions have to do with how the ion channels are distributed. Now, if you can somehow change that distribution, you change the capacitation with a chemical attack, and you have a male contraceptive. So that's what's behind that. And this part here, that's the chromosomal reaction. And again, you can find out the conditions with which you lose the possibility of fertilization. Now, this is just, this shows you that there are big candidates, that this is the one that you should work on if you want to have this male contraception. Now this, and the experiments, they have been doing experiments and where they're starting to have this male contraception working. And it's more or less in accordance with what I showed you. Now this takes me to the second part, and here I'll be very obscure and impressionist, because what happens with this is that it excited me. I really liked it. I still don't understand it. And this is not what we have done, but what we would like to do. And there's a series of papers of a group that one of these is in the States, the other was in the Economía Superior, etc. And these people say that when you see organisms and how the organisms evolve, they argue that they evolve going from critical state to critical state. It's not one point in how you get there, and that's it. But that when you're there, if you change and the environment changes, you change. They have to go in time scales close to the environment. When you change, you hop to another critical state. And then it's not the concept of a critical point. It's the concept of a line of critical points, and you live in there, and that's where evolution takes place. that's the idea that's coming there. And well, coming from physics, there's in physics a transition is the Kosterlitz-Thouless transition that has a line of critical points. So it's enticing to see if one can learn something about that. And these field theories, they all fall in the group of Landau, Ginsburg, Wilson type of Hamiltonian. But there's a lot of work there going on. These are other types of models. You see, there are in the transition between different phases according to the line. These phases swiftly shift between different critical points, and these are the lines. I was talking with Henrik Jensen, and he talked to me about concepts of tangled coevolution, and maybe something rings a bell with that. But then I would like to understand that. And then here, this is that I worked many years ago in a problem that had to do with evolution in paleolakes, how they change. And these are some mines, and these mines have walls, and the walls have lines. And these lines is volcanic activity and the position of the diatoms. So this is an extremely interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary work. And I can't take the time to explain who worked on that, but it's from all over, and most of it was done in UNAM. And you can see from this the evolution of how the lakes changed, how the diatoms changed, the competition between the taxa, how it worked, and statistically, if you have regions that have some scaling laws or extended scaling. And extended scaling is that the moments scale with each other, not the whole probability. Now, but why do I mention this? This is what you would see. This is a section that has a lot of the volcanic ashes, that has a lot of the skeletons. The skeletons look like that. We analyzed 98 different taxa. That was done in the Institute of Physics, and it's a big collaboration. The leading person here is Gloria Villaclara. She works in the FES Cuautitlán, and she's a hymnologist. These are the types of animals that you have there. And the whole story is a competition between this one and this one. And they compete, and this is the one that explains what's going on. We managed to explain that. Here you have registers that you would have along 10,000 years of how the weight of the ashes compares with the weight of the diatoms. So this has to do with the composition. And there's one region here, there's another region here. This has extended scaling, this has scaling. We did some characterization. This could be seen like that. But then I'm telling you about this because in stratigraphy, they tend to look at this in terms of as time goes by, time is here, the depth of the probe, as time goes by, how the different taxa start grouping up and form cumulus. And this has to do with the forming of that cumulus. But then you have some sort of families here, and then you have here transitions, and they talk about it as transitions. And I have the idea that these transitions could very well be manifestations of a critical point. And if you start seeing this, then you would have this hopping between critical points. And that's what's intriguing me to work on that. And here is, again, this part here, here's a signal. And these are characterizations. One of them has to do with entropy, and the other one has to do with a nonlinearity index developed in Cuernavaca by Marcos Müller, a student of mine, myself. And it explains a lot of what's going on. And we can also start visualizing that some of the information here can identify critical points. And that's what I would like to see work on. And again, this has to do with the Kosterlitz-Thouless two-dimensional phase transition. This is a paper of last year. And we use this thing here. And finally, just 2 slides about music. When I studied physics, I I had to decide whether to be a musician or a physicist. And the solution was, as Peter Stadler said, I feel like I'm in a rock group. Well, we were in a rock group, and we played for about 10 years, and we were much more famous as a rock group than as physicists or chemists, etc. But music's always fascinated me. And here, this is an example of, there was a meeting on the complexity of structure of matter. But I put this here because people that work at this network, complex network, the proposal of this, why do you want to look at this, etc. And there's a lot of biology inside. But here, this is a paper of this author there, and he actually looks at the structure of musical harmony. And I thought this was beautiful. He says, music, you have a network, you have nodes, and these nodes, the notes are nodes, and they interact with each other through dissonance, and you build this thing up, and then from a disordered set of notes, you get to a state. There's a state transitions. And the state transition actually, they can find that you can go to about 6 different states. And one of those states is the 12-note scale we use, is Bach's tempered clavichord. So it's one of the possible ones. And here it's studied, it's again, the Kosterlitz Paulus transition. And here it's using renormalization group. And with the renormalization group, they find all these states. I found this fascinating, and I would like to explore more about that. So we have done work on music. That has to do with scaling behaviors and music scores. And this has to do with, there's a narrative in music. And so it's a subject that we've always been interested in. So finally, the closing remarks. The closing remarks is that criticality appears as a necessary condition. I want to emphasize that. Many people, when they see criticality, it's that they do measurements and they explain things under the idea of criticality, and they do measurements that justify talking about criticality, but probably I did not convince you because there's very little time. The best thing is to play with this around, but in what I showed you, it's that if you impose as a hypothesis criticality, you recover the behavior you get from alternative methods. So it's something really intrinsic necessary. Then the other thing is that physics, and here I didn't mention it, but when I said about having a space and another space, etc., you can relate that to percolation. Probably it's invasion percolation, but then again, that's statistically the same type of Hamiltonians that I was talking about. It's a phi 3 theory, but it's in that big family of statistical behaviors. And I want to emphasize that there's much to be learned in the physics biology interchange, and that there are journals and things. There's biology inspired by physics, but there's also physics inspired biology. A friend of mine in the University of Urbana, where I spent a sabbatical, he said, if you want to know what complexity is, it's the development of the mathematics that allows you to understand biology. It's very, it's skewed to a certain position, but it gives you an idea. And then there's some other things. Right now, there's a group of 4 students that we're working together, and these are proposals of the students, and one has to do with the concept of anticipation, recurrence relations. There's this extended criticality, and this is based on category theory. That unfortunately I had to do some work in Cuernavaca, where I live, and I couldn't be here yesterday. But I understand that somebody spoke about category theory, and here in the C3 there was a beautiful seminar about category theory of a postdoc that's working in Santa Fe. And also, I also believe that renormalization group has something to say about this. I don't want to go without saying the work of Giorgio Parisi, which has been an inspiration in this field. And And I put this thing here. There's a posthumous book by Conrad Waddington. He's the one that produced this epigenetic landscape concept. And the book is called Tools for Thought. If you can get hold of it, it's fantastic. But then I was thinking that perhaps we need a new book. It's Thoughts for Tools, because we're using a series of tools that we still don't really understand what's going on. And this resonates with an interview that they gave in Parisi in an Italian newspaper. And they said, and what do you want to do in the future? He said, well, I would like to learn a little bit about artificial intelligence. There's kind of a lot to be understood. Maybe I can contribute a little bit. So that's that. And then Germinal Cocho, he's been talking about criticality in biology for 50 years. And he has always been an inspiration in that. And I think that if we're going to talk about the history of complexity in Mexico and the C3, he's another one of the founding fathers of this center. He's the visionary, the one who kind of saw what was coming along. And I think this is just to show the different groups. This has to do with the fertilization. These are students who got their degrees. All over there, I told you about, there's about 6 PhDs in what I showed you before. And this is a group that's working in the music, and this is a group that's working in this. So again, people come from all sorts of places, and it's a good example of the richness of transdisciplinarity in doing research. And with this, I finish. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gustavo. So we're going to take only one question. Yes, Julia?
Well, congratulations for your work. Very quickly, just to tell everybody that Germinal is with us here in the Altar de Muertos, in the tombs where he's included, of course. So, and to tell you that the posters are still on. And yesterday I saw a work on music that I think that it will be lovely. I don't know if the one who did it is still here, but on Moncayo, and he found something really interesting. And well, it would be so nice if he could talk to you. Well, but congratulations.
Perdón, pisé Alejandro. Okay, thank you very much, Gustavo. We're going to continue with the same link, with the same video on YouTube. So now we welcome Rafael Barrio from Instituto de Física here at UNAM. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I don't want to thank the organizers for inviting me to face a public, hungry public, just facing food or me. Yeah. So I will try to be very brief because we need to eat soon. But I would like to tell you something about a recent work that we have made that has to do with big data and the kind of information that you could get from that. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the sorry, it's not my fault. Goals who were proposed by the United Nations in 2015. They proposed to reach these goals by 2030. So we're going to discuss about that. Oh, no, this is it. Which one?
Adelante.
Okay, right. So these are the 17 goals that were proposed by the United Nations. You have seen this thing many times, and I will ask you here to memorize this transparency because we're going to use it later on. Yeah? So, about big data could be used for many purposes: political, economical, scientific, commercial, whatever. Yeah? And this is an example which is very timely about political use of big data. These are the routes for the drugs worldwide. Yeah? And as you can notice, this is the largest route because the width corresponds to the amount of drugs. This is the consumption thing, and goes directly from Colombia, Ecuador, and all that through Mexico to the United States. This is the largest route. Notice that Venezuela is not here. Yes? And obviously, the second largest consumer is Europe. Yeah. But I notice also that China is not there, which is surprising because of the Opium War. Yeah. Well, big data we have used many times. We use telephones, mobile phones, 8 million mobile phones, and we make some scientific work about it. So we could see the frequency of calls between different people. Okay, another example of social networks. This is a work we have done with my ex-student, Alberto. Alberto is not here, right? Oh, he's here. Oh, yeah. Right. So you're not ex yet. So he studied, during the pandemic, studied the Twitter, some 7 or 8 million tweets around the time of the pandemic. And we examined this data, and he could see this clustering between anti-government tweets and pro-government tweets. When you do a further analysis of this data, you discover that this is pro-government and anti-government tweets, and here is the news tweets, which are very much connected with the government, which is very interesting. Yeah. So I haven't started yet. So I want to conclude this introduction with a horrifying statement by Yuval Harari. Yeah. I warn you that in this talk we will be very much depressed by many things. One of them is this statement by Harari. I don't read it because you know how to read, right? Okay. So we start. We collected the data from this report, 2023, by Jeffrey Sachs, who is the head of this project in the United Nations. Okay, we collected the data, we put hands to work, and we published the results in this paper. It was surprising the impact that it got. In very few days, it got 2,000 or something visits. And here are the authors. It is me, then it is Julia, Xipe, and Kimo, who is a Finnish professor, and these are my best friends. It was very pleasant, very pleasant to work with them. There are others who are not my best friends, but they are friends anyway. Yeah, like Miguel, who was here yesterday or something. Carlos, who is probably here or not. Oh yes, he is. Very good friend. And Matias, who is in Bariloche, couldn't be here, in Bariloche, Argentina. And the real author is this one, who is my ex or not ex student. Yes. And he actually presented some of this work yesterday in a poster, right? So I recommend you this poster. So here, the method that we use is represented here. Obviously, you need some data pre-processing. You have to choose the 3 V's of the big data thing, which is volume, versatility, and veracity. Yeah. So you have to choose them so they can be homogeneous. Then you plug them into this box, which you make sort of initial local analysis, global analysis, which is the PCA. And then you go to local analysis, which is T-SNE, which is T-distributed stochastic neighbor embedding. And this is the purpose of doing this is just to extract information and have an image which could strike you the main things at once. Yes, just as imaging, so to speak. And then you could make trajectories and maps by doing this cluster and DB scan. Okay. So this is an example, the principal component analysis. You have the 17 goals here, and you have the average scores per year. And the lines go from red to green in different years, in the 23 years that we are studying. And you can see very interesting things here. First of all, you need that goal number 9 is the poorest one. Yes, and what is goal number 9? You didn't memorize it? We have to go back then. Oh, here. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So infrastructure is very poorly represented in the world. Okay, I can say that this is the average of all 117 countries that we have examined. Yeah, there are 117 countries and 17 goals. So there's a dimension of our data. And you can see this is the minimum, but is the one who has had more progress during the years. Yes? Contrary to that, which is this is the maximum, but there's practically no progress during the years. And these goals, I mean, you didn't memorize either, no? Huh? Yes. Okay, very good, Julia. This is climate change and responsible consumption. Yes. And okay. This is, okay, another example of what you could get from here is this. You could actually couple the color means the continent, and you can see what in this principal axis, where they lie, and what the trajectories of those has been during the years. And you can see that they're very, very straight lines, meaning a very good path. And there are other lines that are very wiggly, which means that sometimes you go down and sometimes you go up in your achieving the goals. And you can see that Africa is more or less negative and Europe is more or less positive, which is actually expecting. Yeah. Another way of plotting this is by, in the principal axis, is just by plotting the vectors for each one, the projections of each vector in this multidimensional space in the PCA axes. And you discover here something very interesting, that most of the goals go to the right side, but there are two that actually orthogonal to them, yeah, which is exactly the goals number 12 and 13, yeah. Now, I don't want to explain this slide because you are experts. I prepared this talk for people who were not experts, yeah? So I had to ask them, what is entropy? Yeah. And of course, they gave me the wrong answer, yeah. But I want to ask you here because I know that you know what entropy is, yeah? So the thing is that you have a probability distribution points in the multidimensional space, and then you use this parameter perplexity, which is just an information entropy, Shannon entropy here, and then you do it for the lower dimensional space, and then you have this entropy, this ratio between the multidimensional and the tridimensional space. And that allows you to get a local correlation between the goals. And so the kind of results that you get with this technique is that this clustering, which is very nice because you get only 6 clusters, and then all the countries within this cluster stay in the same cluster for the 20 years, except a very few, which are these dotted lines, which change cluster, yeah? For instance, this goes to the red, to the pink. I don't ask you to memorize the colors, but we're going to use them. Or for instance, there's one who goes from the red to the purple. This is interesting, really. This is no cluster at all. I mean, but anyhow, okay. From the red to the pink, right? And there's another from the red to the purple. Oh, no, purple is mainly here, right? And you can see, there's a very automatically, it comes out that these data are related to the geopolitics, so to speak. Yeah, it's not only geography, but geopolitics, because I mean, you can see that Russia is in the same group as Iran, Turkey, and Morocco. Yeah, shit. Yeah. And that China is in the one cluster with India and South Asia and many places in Africa. And you can see that Latin America is just one block, yeah? Except Central America, where many other clusters have influences. And you can see the American Empire, which is this, Alaska, Japan, and Western Europe. And you can see the United Kingdom Empire, which is Australia, Canada, and Eastern Europe and Scandinavia. So this is not only cultural, it's geopolitical thing. And this is very interesting, okay? Now, you can see the same plots. This is very nice because it has a lot of information. You can see at once that Russia and China are very much in the same tune, yeah? Except that China is not caring very much about climate change, yes? Which it has to do because it had to develop industry and science and everything, and that needs a lot of coal and energy. So, and Russia practically flat in all that. Also, you can see that there is similarity between the United States and the UK empire. And you can see that they're very much advanced in practically all goals, except in these two, which I hope you memorize already, that they are climate change and industrial consumption. Yeah, responsible consumption. Yeah. So, and you can see that Africa and Latin America are more or less the same. And here, which is a reflection. Oh, I consume the battery? Oh gosh. What? Battery consumption. It will be number 112. We haven't examined that. Okay, so, and here, there's another interesting thing. It explains many things. We have calculated the correlation matrix between, for average all countries and for the 17 goals. So we have this correlation matrix, 17 by 17. As you can see, most of the goals here are positively correlated. That means that if you advance in one goal, you have advances also in other goals, except these two, which are possibly correlated between them, but they are anti-correlated with all the others, which are precisely climate change and responsible consumption. What does it mean? That if you really want to do something about climate change, you won't progress in any of the other goals, which is killing hunger, education, whatever. It takes a lot of resources. Yeah. Now, you have the dynamical behavior here, which, as you can see, is almost flat. That means that there has not been progress in attaining the goals in 20 years. Yeah, but there is a hope because the curves are concave, meaning that they are approaching faster the goals. And if they are concave, and then we made a extrapolation with a quadratic equation, and you can see Russia is likely to, is not Russia, it's China, is likely to attain the goals by 2045 or 50. And the United States in 2100, which is surprising. Why the countries that have more resources and progress more slowly than the other countries that have not many resources, but a lot of problems, yes? Okay, so we have a dynamical theoretical model here, which takes into account probably the main ingredients that are at do you have a pointer here? Okay, well, I'm not large enough to tell you, but the first term there, it takes into account the resources, yeah? The annual spending, this is the annual spending, and this GL is a matrix that assigns different financing to different clusters, yes? The other two there are the nearest neighbor's influence and the next nearest neighbor influences. That means that you cooperate with some neighbors in order to get the thing. And this one is very important because it actually has the correlation matrix between goals, which actually could hamper you if this term is negative, yeah? And it's proportional to the thing, so you could go exponentially down as well. So, and this sort of term is a memory term. That means that the decisions that you make annually have to do with the decisions that you have made before. And also, yeah, for each term you have parameters, so you have to adjust these parameters to the data, so to speak. And when you do that, you get this result. The result is that, okay, you are very good at most of the goals and you reach the goals by year 2080 at the very best. But these other two goals that you see that they are problematic, you never reach them. Yeah. So as a result, you never go to zero in this plot. So you never reach the goals, but you sort of stay more or less stable by the year 200. And it is universal for all countries. Yeah. These are the clusters that we saw, yes, the other day. And as you can see, Africa, all these people moved very fast. Latin America, not so much. But the United Kingdom and the United States look very slowly. Probably the United Kingdom is the worst. But why is that? Because if you're nearly there, it's not important. It's not urgent for you. So you spend very little money and very little action in trying to deal with these problems. So at the moment, we are using this model that probably Alberto showed you in the poster yesterday, to make some predictions, reliable predictions under different scenarios. Yeah. So we say, okay, money is important, cooperation between countries is important, memory is important, and correlation between your goals is important. That's it. Okay, we modify the parameters in order to simulate some hypothetical scenario and trying to decide which one is the most favorable one. Favorable. Most favorable one to attain the goals in the shortest time. Yeah. And at the moment we are preparing, practically with the same authors, the second paper. This was just the analysis of the data, which actually guided us in order to make build a theoretical model that could make us understand better what is going on in the whole problem. So I think I stop there.
We have time for one question.
No, two.
Two quick questions. Okay, we have one here.
Hi, excellent presentation. However, I would like to know if within all this context, you have kind of a vision on how to actually fix, maybe based on the same methodologies, the issues that you bring up. A lot of this information requires, let's say, somewhat complex level of understanding of all these concepts, and most people at the level that we would need for them to know of this in order to actually fix everything, lack this knowledge, and it's a systemic issue. So that's actually my question. Based on this kind of analysis, how is there anything in there that could guide an idea and how to actually fix mostly or at least somewhat of what you have presented?
Yes. Well, your question is the same question that the referee made. I said, okay, all of this is very good, but how you could fix it? Yeah. How could you tell the politicians what to do in order to fix the picture? Well, no, what we could take the politicians is that they are very dumb and they have improvised these goals and these things based on goodwill and that they sound very good. But they didn't take into account that they are cultural and economical and things that contribute to the whole idea. So what we could tell the politicians is what you're doing is wrong. That's why my last transparency was the only conclusion is that we're not making it. Yeah. Yes, the idea of our future work is to analyze what really matters and which kind of goals we could make sort of hierarchy of goals. Because if you attain one goal, probably it's easier to attain another goal. For instance, if you combat hunger first, then you could worry about education. Yeah. Because if you have children dying of hunger, there's no point of educating them. That's right. That sort of thing is not taken into account. And for that, we need a multidisciplinary work. Yeah, because we need politics, we need economics, we need biology, we need ecology, and okay, let's do it. That's my message, really.
Related with the data set, what variables could be more impact on the curve behavior to converge to the goals?
Yes, that is a very good question because I don't know. The answer is I don't know because as the data are, each goal has about 500 different indexes that give you a score. There is no uniformity on these indexes, and there is no uniformity on how you make the score, how you normalize the whole thing. So that needs to be done. There are many people in this room and in this institute that know how to do that. Yes, but unfortunately, it was not made in this report. Yeah, because they were politicians.
Thank you very much. Aplausos, por favor.